Morning. Aloha mai kako. Good morning. This is the June 20th, 2024 Land Use Commission meeting. This is an in-person meeting being held at the University of Hawaii Maui College Student Lounge, Pilina 310 West Ka'ahumanu Avenue, Kahului, Hawaii 96732. This meeting is open to the public. Court reporting transcriptions are being done from a Zoom recording of this meeting. For all meeting participants, I'd like to stress the importance of speaking slowly, clearly, and directly into your microphone. And before speaking, please state your name and identify yourself for the record. So even though this is an in-person meeting, please be aware that all meeting participants are being recorded on the digital record of this Zoom meeting, and it will be posted on YouTube, and it will be used for court reporting purposes. So your continued participation is your implied consent to be part of the public record of this event. If you do not wish to be part of the public record, you should exit the meeting now. I also share with all participants that depending on the duration of today's meeting, I will be taking breaks from time to time, nominally 5 minutes every hour. And if we proceed through lunchtime, I will be taking a lunch break. My name is Dan Giovanni, and I have the pleasure to serve as the LUC chair. We currently have 8 seated commissioners, all of which are here today, and along with me are Commissioner Lee Ohigashi from Maui. This is actually his last meeting. Commissioner Kamakea Ohelo, Commissioner George Atta, also his last meeting, George. Commissioner Mel Kahele and Commissioner Brian Lee, all from Oahu. Commissioner Nancy Carr Smith from the Hawaii Island, and Commissioner Michael Yamane from Kauai. Also in attendance are LUC Executive Officer Daniel Orendenker, LUC Chief Planner Scott Derrickson, LUC Staff Planner Martina Segura, LUC Chief Clerk Ariana Kwan, and seated to my right, LUC Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General Miranda Steed. Our 7th order of business for this 2-day meeting is a status and progress report for A11-792 from the Department of Housing and Human Concerns, County of Maui, in response to the recently submitted 2019 to 2023 annual report. The original district boundary amendment for this petitional area was for approximately 73,000 acres in Lanai City on the island of Lanai. At this time, I'd like the parties to identify themselves for the record, starting with the petitioner.
Josiah Nishita, Managing Director for the County of Maui.
Buddy Almeida, Housing Administrator for the County of Maui.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners and staff. First Deputy Mimi Desjardins, Corporation Counsel on behalf of the County of Maui.
Thank you. From the state.
Good morning. Allison Kato, Deputy Attorney General for the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, and Aaron Sotogawa from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Thank you.
Ms. Sargent, I just want to clarify, are you representing the county or the Department of Housing and Human Concerns within the county or the planning department?
Thank you, Chair. I'm here representing the Department of Housing and Human Concerns for the County of Maui. Thank you. And then we will be getting an update status from the managing directors. Just for clarity, the managing director's office has also been involved in the development of this progress of this development. So they're both here.
Okay. I think it'll become clearer as we proceed. Let me briefly describe our procedure for today. First, I will ask my fellow commissioners if there are any conflicts of interest or disclosures that they would like to make. And then I will update the record accordingly. Then I will recognize written public testimony that has been submitted on this matter, identifying the person or organizations who have submitted the written testimony. Next, I will call on members of the public who wish to testify on the status and progress report. Members of the public will each have a few minutes to provide their testimony and should stand by after their testimony to respond to any questions from the parties or the commissioners. When all questions have been completed, the chair will excuse the witness and call the next witness to testify. After completion of the public testimony portion of the proceedings, the chair would like the petitioners to provide their status report. The chair will then call on OPSD and the county planning department, if appropriate, for comment regarding the status report. The petitioners will then be allowed to respond to comments made by the county and the state. The commissioners will ask questions of the party at the conclusion of each of their presentations. At the conclusion of the party's testimony and the commissioners' questions, the public will be granted a second opportunity to provide public testimony in the same manner set forth previously. Once all the testimony concludes, the commission will enter into deliberations regarding the status report and decide if any action is necessary. This time, I'd like to address whether or not we have any conflicts of interest or disclosures. So in accordance with HRS 8414, commissioners are not allowed to take any official action affecting any business in which they or a member of their family has a financial interest. They must therefore recuse themselves from this matter if there would be any benefit, monetary or otherwise, to themselves or members of their family. Also, in accordance with legal ethical standards, commissioners should disclose any relationship, business, social, or otherwise, that they may have with the petitioner or its representatives or any other parties to this proceeding that may give rise to an allegation of bias or impropriety. Commissioners, do any of you have a conflict of interest or disclosure that you'd like to make at this time? Seeing none, we will proceed on the basis that there's none. Please be informed that relevant records and documents pertaining to this matter can be accessed for review on the public LUC website. That can be found at https://luc.hawaii.gov/A11-792. Public testimony. Ms. Kwan, has any written public testimony been received on this matter?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we received 3 written testimony on Monday and 1 on Tuesday.
Pardon me, could you say that again a little slower? I didn't quite get it.
Sorry, we received 3 written testimonies on Monday and 1 on Tuesday. All 4 have been posted to the website, and we haven't checked the email box since.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kwan, is there any member of the public that wish to provide testimony today?
No, Mr. Chair.
Very well. So we'll now proceed, excuse me, to the status report. And I'd like to call on County of Maui Department of Housing and Human Concerns. Will you please provide your status report?
Chair Mimi Desjardins, the way that we are going to structure this is that I will be giving an overview for the commissioners as to the progress up to the point of the status report. Mr. Almeida is here in case there are questions that DHHC can answer. And then Mr. Nishita will be providing a further update from the date of the status report because there's been a significant amount of development between January and now on this project that we'd like to present, if that's acceptable to you.
That sounds great. So why don't we swear in the 2 gentlemen that are with you so we don't have to interrupt the presentation. So would you state your name and your position, and then I'll swear you in.
Thank you, Chair. Buddy Almeida, Housing Administrator for the County of Maui.
Thank you, Mr. Almeida. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth? Thank you.
Josiah Nishita, Managing Director for the County of Maui.
Mr. Nishita, do you swear the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth?
I do. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. We may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. The countywide policy plan for Maui County, as you know, includes a substantial objective of increasing and maintaining affordable housing inventory through the prioritization of available infrastructure capacity. This project had its genesis back in March of 2010 when the Department of Housing and Human Concerns applied for and was approved for a 201H 38 project through the County of Maui County Council. At that time, the proposed project consisted of approximately 372 units. 199 were proposed for sale units. 173 would be for sale and rental of multifamily units. There were numerous conditions that were imposed by the County Council, and many of those conditions involved the Department of Housing and Human Concerns providing updates to the planning director during this process in order for the planning director to be apprised of what was happening. At that time, it was also contemplated that the county would have to apply through DHHC to the Land Use Commission for a district boundary amendment because the footprint for this project is substantially larger than the less than 15 acres, which would have been allowed for our council to approve that district boundary amendment. The contemplated project was to consist of approximately 5 phases. And at the time in June 2011, when the Land Use Commission issued its decision and order on the 73,000 acres, which is located in Lanai City, the project had changed slightly in numbers. It was then represented to be approximately 425 residential units, 208 units having a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size. That was a condition imposed by the County Council in their modification of the approval. And 217 units would be multifamily use units. There was also a condition placed by this commission as that there would be 2 parks, which was consistent with a park requirement of 2.38 acres established by the resolution by the County Council. So even back in its progress towards getting its DBA approval and its 201H 38 approval, you can see that the project had changed somewhat even in course back then. There was an acknowledgement of about 17 years to complete this project in 5 phases, which would put the completion of this project somewhere around 2028 to 2030. Because the county was not able to establish a timetable for each increment, this body, through a declaratory ruling, waived that time requirement. And so there isn't anything in your DNO that says when each of those increments needs to be completed. The challenges with this project involve mostly around infrastructure. And when Mr. Nishida gives his update, he will also be letting you know that since the time of the approvals for this project, 2 things have happened. One is the Hokuau project, which was sponsored by Palama Lanai, and that's a for-rent project. It did receive approval by the county and is actually built. That is adjacent to this property. One of the conditions that was placed on Hokuau during the council's deliberations was that they stub out to the border of their property. And I have the wording here, excuse me. A necessary infrastructure stub in to assist the county in its development of this project.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that last part again? That was a little confusing.
So part of the requirements in the Hokuau project was that they stub out to the border of their project infrastructure mechanisms that would allow the county to hook up and to help assist, because one of the issues was that this project was stalling substantially because of infrastructure issues. I also know that DHHL is in the process of also developing adjacent to this. So the good news is that we have some movement on necessary infrastructure, which has been obviously our greatest challenge. So fast forward to approximately January, the Department of Housing and Human Concerns did receive notice from you folks that they were substantially delinquent on their reporting of this project. And based on the letter dated, I believe it was in January, you folks did advise DHHC to appear today to provide a status report. That was Mr. Orendecker's letter of January 29th, 2024. I checked with the planning department and they did not have comments to provide to you folks today, because really nothing in their wheelhouse has occurred since the approvals were given back in 2010 and 2011. So I'm comfortable in representing that to you. I do have DHHC here, but I do want to make one slight correction to the most recent status report. And that was the one that was provided on February 21st, which spanned a number of years. It does say in there that an updated master plan was developed in 2019. That actually is a draft master plan. That is not a final master plan. And why that's important will become more relevant when Mr. Nishida gives you his update. So that brings us currently to where we are. And then I would ask that you folks, if you have any questions of me, that's great. Otherwise, if we could hear from Mr. Nishida, that might be helpful. Thank you.
So I think it's just for procedural purposes, we'll let the presentation proceed as you stated. And then the part about nothing in DPP's wheelhouse, I'm calling you again to state that officially representing DPP.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? When was the Lanai project, when was that implemented?
Thank you, Member Oigashi. I do have the resolution in front of me. Hold on. I know the project was completed this year, if I'm not mistaken, but that resolution approving that project was in 2021. That was adopted September 2021. And I can read to you the modification that I referred to. It said that the developer must develop a stub out for water and a stub out for wastewater in coordination with and for the use of the county's Lanai Affordable Housing Project on the parcel adjacent to the Hokowao project. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nishida, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair.
State your name again for the record.
Josiah Nishida, Managing Director with the County of Maui. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. And before I begin my presentation, I didn't realize this was Lee's last meeting, but big appreciation to you, Lee, for all your work, not only on the State Land Use Commission, but and other areas of our community. You and your whole family have been great for our community, so express our appreciation to you. Just to continue kind of where our Corporation Council left off, efforts really started picking up steam, I think, with more coordination between the two adjacent property owners, which would be Department of Hawaiian Homelands and Pulama Lanai, and in the aftermath of the August 2023 wildfires. So we did have a lot of households relocate out of West Maui into other areas of our community, some of that being Lanai, as well as other places across the County of Maui, State of Hawaii, and the United States. We did approach and talk to a variety of entities, to potentially pursue this project, as we're looking for quote unquote more shovel ready projects that we can bring online as quickly as possible. Given that it has some existing entitlements and the fact that Ulama Lanai had already proceeded with their project, including bringing a lot of infrastructure to the property line, this made sense in a variety of ways, as well as the overall need in the community and then lack of significant investment, I think, over recent years in that community in terms of housing for the residents there. I know staff mentioned earlier that what testimony had been received to date. The developer that we're working with did submit testimony to you folks today. Apologies for the late submission, but it does include a lot of additional information that I think would be helpful for the commission to review at a later point. And of course, following this, we're happy to continue to provide status updates as needed. We did in this latest round of just to backtrack a little bit, I think what our corporation counsel mentioned was the cost of infrastructure being one of the significant barriers to entry here. We did submit for a congressionally directed spending and community project funding request with our federal delegation. That did make it through each of our members of our federal delegation to the appropriations committees. And so we're waiting to hear hopefully favorable determination on that. But that was for approximately $7.1 million for additional infrastructure improvements that would be needed. Additionally, since the project was kind of first being developed, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands did receive a significant tranche of funding, as well as more recently, our Maui County Council appropriated or determined in our Maui County Code that DHHL would be a recipient of 20% of our general excise tax funds collected here in the county of Maui. So we have been in discussions with them, as well as a developer has had discussions with them regarding potential use of that funding and ways we could partner together on their adjacent land here on Lanai. So I think a confluence of different types of factors and events have led us to be able to really pick the ball up and get this project going. We do have a will serve letter from the Lanai Water Company, and we will provide sewer to the property. So I know that that was stipulated as a part of the conditions. Our plan right now is to pursue phase one of what was approved. Our corporation counsel mentioned the updated master plan. Our team is pursuing the phase one development as to the approved 2010 master plan. And then in discussions with the community members, as you can imagine, significant changes has occurred over the years in that community, and maybe the desire and need for different types of housing. And so our anticipation is we will pursue the phase one in compliance with the conditions set forth by the State Land Use Commission and the 201H approval. And we may be back to this body for additional changes for future phases to accommodate some of the changes in the community and expressions that we've heard, particularly as it relates to like the need for more senior housing, multifamily housing, and other types of mixes. The developer we're working with is going to be pursuing LIHTC funding in February of next year. And we're working on getting the agreement together through the county council before the end of this year. The anticipation is if we're awarded the LIHTC funding and the federal funding that we've requested, which it appears we have a fairly good chance at receiving, we do anticipate the developer would be able to start ground altering activities as early as the end of next year, with a completion likely within about 18 or maybe less than 24 months. So that's kind of our anticipation of what we're working with. Of course, there's significant challenges to developing on Lanai, particularly the workforce and housing for additional contractors and equipment and whatnot. So, you know, we will and can keep the LUC updated as to any challenges we face, but that's our anticipation at this moment. I think that would be it for kind of my high level presentation. I'd be happy to address any questions when the time comes. Thank you very much, Chair.
Any more in presentation at this time, or just shall we go to Q&A?
Thank you, Chair. I believe we're ready to go to Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Yamane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question on the stub outs for infrastructure. What was that for? Electrical, water, sewer? Because my understanding is Hopewell is off grid, so I'm curious about the stub outs. What infrastructure stub outs was that for?
Thank you for the question. According to the modification, it was a stub out for water and for wastewater.
Thank you.
Mr. Carsmith?
Thank you. So is that true? Is it off grid, that area?
Thank you, Commissioner. I am not aware that that's off grid. My understanding was it was on grid, but I could be completely mistaken. I was pretty involved in the development of this, and I don't recall a large conversation about that. There may have been a modification they made later after they completed their project.
Mr. Yamane, can you clarify what development you're referring to that's
Yeah, I was referring because she said Hopewell was meant to provide a stub out. It was an electrical stub out, but Hopewell is off grid. They're not connected to Miko. Then how are they going to get the electrical? That was my question.
Palama Lanai project?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think the off-grid component, maybe what you're talking about is the last time anyway that I saw the units, they were working on like solar paneling or like even the tile roofing, like the Tesla tile roofing and things like that to generate power and battery backup systems. So my understanding is that what was represented by Corporation Council is correct, that water and wastewater service is being provided to the area and stubbed out to our property line. But what you're referring to may be on the electrical piece. Thanks.
Another question, please. I was curious, excuse me, if the new project that was finished this year and the DHHL project coming into fruition, did those projects have any effect on changes that you might make going forward with the new plan?
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to respond. I think that's essentially partly what we're alluding to earlier, that we do anticipate likely going to have to come back before the commission for future phases of development, given just the changes in characteristics of the area, the population needs, as well as now that additional projects are coming online, we want to make sure we're not duplicating resources there to meet the need, just especially given such a small population on island. We want to make sure that we're filling like the niche gaps, which is why on kind of the first phase, I know we're shooting for the 80% and below AMI to be provided, whereas the Hokuau side, although it is a for rental project, is a little bit on the higher side of that AMI spectrum. Thank you.
One more question, please. I saw there was a condition regarding providing land to DOE. But then it seems as though the property might be surrounded by DOE property. So can you explain that, please?
Thank you much for the question. Yeah, I believe it's about 40 something acres that wasn't involved in the LUC approval. The LUC approval and DBA was for the 76 acres, I believe, somewhere around there, for the 201H project. So that area essentially kind of has been carved out already. And the Lanai High and Elementary School Master Plan Committee did work with DOE and others on some potential future improvements for that. I think what we'll want to make sure as we build out phase one and look to future phases is that all of those goals and plans are still in line with what the community desires. And we are prepared to meet that condition as provided. And if the community, requests us to do something else, we'll come talk to the LUC to gain approval, for any changes.
Thank you very much. Good for now, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Ohigashi.
So, was there something about a pool? The Lanham pool there? Wasn't there something about that in the past? I seem to have that recollection.
Are you talking specifically about this property?
Yeah,
Sure.
I just have that recollection, but if it's not,
Okay, thank you for the question. I'm not aware of that being a part of the 201H development, but that may have been a part of the master planning for the DOE piece. I know that they had fields and other, ball facilities and whatnot, being potentially looked at, for that property, but, I'm not aware of any, pool being planned for this property. Thank you.
and, the declaratory ruling eliminating the timetable was, what was the date on that? I just was curious.
That was in 2011.
So, one of my comments is that, that the annual reports does not seem to have any meat on. In fact, when you compare them to the 2015, the 2018, and the present one, they're same reports. So, none of the factors that you listed today were included in any of the reports. So I'm hoping, since I cannot be here in the future, I'm hoping that your next report will be more informative. That's the word. And, some people claim that I don't read these things, and I just happen to notice it. It's all the same report, and I guess thank you for that. It made it reading easier. The other thing too is in 2011, what was the plan for the infrastructure? Was it contingent upon DHL and Lanai building up their facilities to provide infrastructure, or was the plan for infrastructure at that time just to go forward with the county money?
I can just relay what my understanding is. I wasn't involved with this project back then, but, my understanding is that, at that time, DHL didn't quite have an anticipation of moving on that property. And, as you know, I think, well, only got approval back in 2021. So, the big share of the cost burden would have been borne by the county or additional sources that we would have been able to secure. Hence, that being one of the significant barriers to entry here.
So the reason why this was never developed over the period of years that we're talking about is the lack of the available resources to do so. Is that right?
Thank you for the question. That is a significant factor. The department also went out, I think in 2016, for an RFP, to develop the site, and my understanding is there was no, bidders for that. It's obviously very difficult to, build on Lanai and then house workers and things like that. So there's other barriers than just resources, but that is a significant, challenge.
It ties in with my understanding that since that time, the commission has been requiring more of financial ability to do these projects from private developers. Do you believe that the county should abide by their and try to financially guarantee that these items will be developed? Because if we started way back then, and the cost would be significantly less for the infrastructure, and we start building out now, we could have made a dent in the housing. So I'm just curious, is that we ding private developers for trying to make sure that they have necessary resources to do the project, to make it real. Would wouldn't that same standard hold to the county that that because it's a county initiative, it's county driven, that you guys have access to legislative appropriations to do the type of work? Shouldn't that type of model be adopted, at least for the county projects that come through?
Thank you very much for the question. I mean, specific to this project, we are pushing forward. I can't say everything that transpired in the past or all the different issues that was faced. But one of the reasons why we are working with a specific developer is because of their ability to and demonstrate ability to leverage state and federal funding, and especially on the tax credit side, so that the county isn't solely on the hook for all of the different expenses that are needed. To be able to pencil out a project, it takes a lot of different funding sources. And frankly, I mean, we don't quite have that expertise to be able to navigate all those different challenges as a particular developer may be able to. But, especially given the amount of recovery resources that are going to be needed for West Maui. I mean, we're talking like billions of dollars. So we need to be able to leverage other sources to be able to make sure things will work. And I'm sure as any other developer, there are extenuating circumstances that were unforeseen at the time that may change the calculations on things, including macroeconomic forces that, we may not be able to control. But I can say from the county side, at this time, we're pushing forward full steam ahead.
And do you have legislative guarantees for certain funding already for next fiscal year to make sure that the initial work regarding the infrastructure as well as the initial work concerning this project be done? Or is it no money yet?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Our council can't appropriate future fiscal years. So, all they can appropriate is the current fiscal year in which we're in. Obviously, the amount of county investment, we've already committed to $10 million towards this project for various types of infrastructure improvements and other things that are needed. And depending on the success of getting state funding and the federal funding, will also come into play as to.
I understand. I'm just asking, starting July 1st, is there funding available that was planned in this past budget that was just signed by the mayor?
Yeah,
0.5 billion or something.
thank you for the question. Because there's no anticipated expenditures from the county side in this fiscal year, there's no money appropriated in this FY25 budget. As I said, we would anticipate development to start at the end of next year, groundbreaking to occur. So that would be in FY26 is when we'd come forward to the county council.
Assuming that you don't get the $7.1 million from the feds, do you plan to then seek funding from the council, or what is your source of funding if you don't get the 7.1 million? I'm just asking that question.
Thank you for the question. There, of course, county funding is potentially always a possibility, but we are trying to leverage other sources, which can include private philanthropy that has expressed interest in helping to fund affordable housing projects in the county of Maui. And as you know, I think the biggest example of this is Hawaii Community Foundation and other organizations that have collected a substantial amount of funding in recovery efforts. As well as the county moves forward, we have requested to the federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, CDBG DR funding that would be able to provide funding for housing infrastructure and economic development.
Okay, and I'm not asking what are the possibilities. I'm just asking that, hey, how much skin is the county going to put into the game if we don't get this alliance? And if you're telling me then that, but you have all these other sparks in the fire. These are the things you are presently working on to obtain. In addition to the 7.1, I understand that. You know, my question is really, given the length of the project and given the fact that it's a county-led project, what is the county going to put essentially the funds into the game to make it happen? That's my question. And I've seen you testify before, and you're very good at it, by the way.
Well, thank you for the question. I must not be that good because the state didn't help us as much as we had asked for. But in any case, I think I obviously can't commit future councils. We're dedicated to making this project work and pencil out. I think the you know, key to remember is that I guess the best example I can give you is the County of Maui just committed in this fiscal year $39 million to make a specific affordable housing project happen in West Maui. So I think we've demonstrated that we will do what it takes to help our residents, and we will certainly try to get every appropriation that we can to help fill any gaps that's needed. Thank you.
Area that, well, first of all, I want to thank our staff, our recent hire staff, especially for ferreting out this particular project, because that's his job, to go look for these projects that are long and find out what the problem is. So that's the reason why I'm asking a lot of these questions about the money part as to what was the reason for the stall, what was the reason for the fact that it wasn't built according to plans, and what is the reason right now that what is necessary monies that it would take. Have you penciled out what this project will be cost the county of Maui in terms of development?
Thank you very much for the question. As I stated earlier, our I guess based on the different funding sources that we're pursuing, our anticipation is a $10 million commitment from the County of Maui, in addition to, you know, the land and other resources like that, like serving wastewater.
I'm asking how much it'll cost us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the total potential development costs in front of me. As I mentioned, our anticipation is to move forward with phase one. And since we're hearing from the community that there may be additional factors that they want us to consider in future phases, that could definitely change the dynamic of costs involved.
And the only reason I'm asking that is in past DBAs, when in order to determine economic viability, generally we ask the question is that what is the general cost going to be for the infrastructure, et cetera, and the financing mechanisms to do so. So I know it's difficult for government to do that. And I know it's difficult for you yourself to commit to that. But those are the things that the development has to go through in a private sector in order to be considered viable outside. And I'm glad you guys got a developer, but these county-led development projects, it goes into a circle. First we do it, we say we can do it ourselves. And I think that, I remember Hannibal Tavares building those above the track and right next to the track and football stadium, that development. Then they go to a cycle where it's a different mayor saying that we're not going to do it ourselves. We're going to go and encourage private development. And then I think Allen guys came around with this development to do it on their own. And then we're now hearing that, yeah, well, we need a developer to really do that. And it seems like we never learned from what went through, and uh, you yourself admit that the county itself cannot do these price outs and determination of what the costs are and actually develop it. And the real question is, how will the county from the future pursue its own initiative type of projects to make them more successful? And by the way, the last question I have is, when will the first phase be completed? Your estimation.
Thank you, for the question. We're anticipating, assuming things are falling in place, which we're on track right now, to be able to break ground by the end of next year, with a completion of the first phase, as I said, likely within 18 to 24 months of, groundbreaking. And Chair, apologies, we did and plan to have the developer here too, to help provide a lot of, information, but, and it was my own fault. I didn't realize that virtual participation was not an option. And I just found that out yesterday. So, unfortunately, they weren't able to be here today, but if there's ever a follow-up meeting or additional information that we need to follow back up with, we can, make sure that they're either present or, providing some type of update to the LUC as needed. Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. It sounds to me like what you're saying is that things are coming together and you've got some confidence that you'll be able to follow through on phase one, and that everything else is up for redefinition, which may lead to an amendment that you come back before here. So with all of the uncertainty that you're projecting for phases 2 through 5, I'd like to focus my questions exclusively on phase 1. So how many houses are in, what's involved in phase 1?
I don't know if I have the testimony before me right now, but, that the developer submitted, but I believe it's about 40 something single family homes in phase 1 and about 20 something multifamily units, I believe, for seniors in phase 1. And as well as there's a park space and I think community center too included in that.
So will the infrastructure that's provided for phase 1 satisfy the infrastructure needs for the subsequent phases, or any portion of it?
Thank you very much for the question. Apologies, I just found the slide. 46 single family units, 26 looks like multifamily units for a total of 72 units. Some of the infrastructure, yes, it will serve other areas such as like bringing in the wastewater and water main lines. Then at that point, you're running kind of like laterals to the additional phases. And as well as like a main roadway. But there's obviously other infrastructure costs that will be factored in with additional phases, since those areas of land would not have been developed. We'll still have to run roads and piping and things like that.
So the electrical infrastructure will not be provided by a stub out from neighboring projects. So have you initiated efforts with the electric company to provide the necessary electrical infrastructure for your project? Because I'm presuming you're not going off grid.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that this project is not planned to be off grid in that sense as Hokuau is. And then my understanding is that the developer has already had conversations regarding providing electrical service to the project.
Phase 1.
Phase 1, yes.
Yeah. if you could, summarize, you may have mentioned it in parts, but what are the major milestones that you need to overcome and check off the list in order to, for phase one only, to be realized?
Well, I'm not sure I can give you an order, but,
Doesn't have to be.
we obviously have funding. So I guess one of the first things is that we're working through right now is the actual development agreement, through council. And we anticipate that to be completed before the end of this year. We do have and our county council is already aware of, the work that's been transpiring, more on a high level basis, but they do know that we're working with a particular developer and trying to push forward this project. And they have encouraged us to come forward with a development agreement for that. So we're in the process of doing that, but I don't anticipate county council approval to be an issue. That should be completed by the end of this year. The developer will go in for LIHTC funding in February. With, I believe, generally they issue approvals for that around like April, May timeframe. And then the congressionally directed spending and community project funding requests. There's really no guarantee on that, on the timeline, because it deals a lot with Congress. And as you know, the House and Senate are pretty split right now. The earliest that they could appropriate funding for this would be on the September, October timeframe of this year. And then the latest I've ever seen it come through would be like summer of next year. So it kind of depends on how Congress acts or works together, as well as even the presidential election on the timing of things. But somewhere within the next year here, we would, if we received the appropriation, we would have access to that funding. And then, of course, there's, we have a lot of the entitlements in place already. There would be, permitting and things like that. And, developer will be working on that concurrently with a lot of different efforts that are underway, with the anticipation to have ground crews on site by the end of next year. And, from there could be a variety of challenges, depending on, worker availability and lodging and different things like that. But we would anticipate about the 18 to 24 month time period for completion of it from following that.
So it sounds like the commitment to proceed with some priority on phase one is there, but the project is at risk if you don't get the funding. And that, so what's plan B if you don't get the funding? Is this thing dead?
Thank you, Chair. Like I said, I can't commit our county council, and they can't even commit themselves to future years of funding. All I can say is that we are committed to getting this project done. We'll shake every tree that's available. And as I said, we've already demonstrated significant commitments to housing, especially at the example I gave, $30 to $9 million to one project. So I know that there's buy-in from our council to be able to fund and build more housing, as well as from our mayor. So we will try every avenue that we can to get this project through to completion if other funding sources don't come through.
So if under other funding sort of state and federal doesn't come through, are you saying it's up to the county internally and then it has to prioritize, for example, against the needs of rebuilding Lahaina?
Thank you, Chair. Of course, every expenditure that we have has to be prioritized to every other one that the county may have to commit to. So, of course, we'll have to weigh the priorities of things that are coming down the pipe. But for rebuilding activities, although there are significant amounts of investment that are going to be needed, we do already have secured public assistance that we're working through our FEMA partners. And we feel pretty good about our request for CDBG DR funding from the feds, where HUD can step in following a disaster to provide significant amounts of funding for housing infrastructure and economic development for the area.
I can't hear you.
I need to fix an audio issue.
Sure.
May we take a break?
Yes, it's 10:55. How much time you need?
10 minutes?
Okay, we'll take a break till 11:05. Thank you. Okay, we're back in session and thank you for that break. Well, so we've had a chance to see the written testimony that was provided to the commission, and I just want to make sure that that was a email with 5 attachments to that email, which to my reading, quick reading, I found very, very useful and interesting and consistent with the representations that you've all made today, but with a lot more detail. It would have been great if they were here to present it. That's what we were really looking for. So what you've done at high level is appreciated, but this is what we were looking for. So we want to make sure, Ariana, this is all being posted as part of the public record.
It will be posted tomorrow on the public record for the website because I have to check ADA compliance.
Very good. And that includes all 5 attachments.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Oigashi, does that satisfy your interest? Yeah, okay. Talk about this. What was that answer?
As long as it's related.
Yeah, we may. Okay, I know that other commissioners have additional questions, so I'm going to suspend my questioning for now. So Commissioner Lee?
Thank you, Chair. MD, I'm sorry, maybe if that you have to answer these questions, but we can only dance with whoever shows up to the ball, right? So you're familiar with the PowerPoint slides that we just received?
Yes, if you're talking about the ones that was submitted as testimony.
No, thank you. I'm a little bit confused because some of this information seems to be about other projects that the developer has worked on, and it's very thin on this project that's actually before us today. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this presentation actually, I mean, I guess when we found out this meeting was going to be happening, we had very little time to like pull some things together. So they actually utilized the presentation they're using for some other means. So it wasn't specifically designed for what we anticipated the LUC to want, but we thought this is the best we have at this time. So let's provide it to the LUC, and then we can always follow up with additional information later.
Okay, so I'm just going to confirm the developer is Ikaika Ohana, although it says they're the service coordinator in these slides. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
I'm not the chair, by the way. It's Chair Giovanni. I'm just a commissioner. Thank you. You mentioned that you mentioned that this project is likely to get LIHTC financing. And I'm wondering what that's based on, because that's usually oversubscribed by maybe 4 times. And the information we've gotten is very thin. What in the qualified allocation plan scorings lends you to say that? Is it the affordability? Is it the readiness of the project? Is it the financing stack? What is it that you're basing your comment on?
Thank you very much for the question. And I can't recall exactly what I said, but I was trying to relay that we feel that not that it's guaranteed, but that it presents itself well as a project to receive funding under LIHTC. One, it's county-owned land, so there's county involvement, including county investment in resources and funding. The capital stack, as you mentioned, the fact that it's a pretty underserved community that hasn't been serviced by other housing projects, especially with this AMI range and for sale development for quite some time, knowing that Pulama owns 98% of the island. And other factors like that that we do feel it is a favorable project for them to consider. But no, we don't have any guarantees that there'll be a commitment for that until, of course, we receive that commitment in writing.
And then the letter by Council Member Johnson says that it's referring to a Pulama Lanai 201H project, but this project today is not a Pulama Lanai project. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. The letter that you're seeing from Councilmember Johnson was his letter that we asked for support for the federal funding request. So this was for the $7.1 million that we asked for on the congressionally directed spending request. This isn't specific to the LUC or the project generally. It's more so affirming the need for additional funding resources. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if you have the answer to this, but if you have it, can you tell just from an overview for the first phase, the number of units and the total cost of that first phase in, all-in cost?
Thank you, Chair. I think as, and Commissioner, I think I mentioned earlier, I don't have on me like a total all-in cost on phase one. But, and I'm sorry, these slides aren't labeled, but looks like maybe slide 7, identifies the overall site plan for phase one on the presentation and identifies the unit breakdown. Which is 46 single-family units and 26 multifamily units for a total of 72 units.
Thank you. So Ikaiko Hano, you put out an RFP and they were the low bidder, or were they the only bidder? Can you give us that information?
Thank you very much for the question. The county did put out an RFP in 2016 and we had no takers. We are working directly with Ikaiko Ohana on this project, and we believe that it does fall under the governor's proclamation related to housing, as well as the county's demonstration that we had already essentially tried to procure out the project.
Okay, so has the developer committed any equity to this project?
Thank you for the question. Could you clarify like what exactly you mean?
Okay, so do you have a development agreement with the developer already signed?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned earlier, we're working through that stage right now to present to the county council. So we don't have that agreement finalized yet.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm aware that you don't have everything that you need to probably answer some of the questions, but I'm just trying to see what we can get. Okay, so at a later time, you will have some numbers as far as what the developer is committed to providing in equity, and you'll have the financing stack available that you can distribute to the public.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, I think ultimately we're trying to relate today to the LUC is that we are making progress on it, and to just, apologies for how long it's taken to get to this point. But, I guess what we're asking for at this time is just a little bit more time as we further refine and develop it so that we can come forward with more information that'll be useful to the LUC.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Well, I got one question first. So I'm somewhat familiar with the process for that grant. You have 7.1 million that you've sought from the feds. And that form of application, if it's the one I'm thinking about, does require a total project estimate and the sources of other funds that would complement the 7.1 million. Do you have that information available?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I don't have the application in front of me. There's a brief write-up that was one of the attachments. That was just a very high-level explanation of the CDS request. And it did indicate the 75% portion to complete some of that additional on-site, off-site infrastructure improvements, as well as the county's commitment of $10 million for the project. But specifically to what you're referencing, I don't have the application in front of me at this time.
So the 7.1 million was earmarked as 25% of the total cost?
Thank you, Chair. The 7.1 million is what is identified as, when you work with the earmark process, there's a lot of factors that go into it, including like what appropriations bills it's under, what federal agency is administering the funds, and then different agencies may have different requirements in terms of cost share requirements. The infrastructure improvements needed to kind of move the project along was identified at the 7.1, which I believe was the 75% share, and the county would come up with the additional 25% share.
So it was specific to infrastructure. Okay, Commissioner Ohigashi.
Yeah, and following up on that, reading that document, I'm not sure who prepared it, but the County of Maui Congressional Directed Spending Request for Affordable Housing Project on Lanai Federal Appropriations 2025. First question is, when was this submitted? Was it submitted through the process?
Thank you for the question. I can't give you an exact time frame, but generally we apply in about February, March of this year for congressionally directed spending. Each senator and rep has their own timeframes relatively, but it was probably around February or March of this year.
And the question is, you've been saying that the County of Maui is ready to commit additional 10 million for this project and able to engage in providing matching fund through county sources. Is there a specific earmark or within the budget that you can back up this $10 million statement? The question is, so let's say we get the $5,325,000 through the earmark process. Does that then require us to find the $10 million the county to find the $10 million, or does it mean that you have it in a bank somewhere ready to spend, or is it sequestered somewhere?
Thank you for the question. As I said, we can't appropriate money for future years other than what is in front of us for the current or upcoming fiscal year. The county does have an ongoing, essentially, line item that we use for federal match, that we have a lump sum in there that we use for a lot of our federal grants. So that's a specific line item appropriation. Of course, we have access to the General Excise Tax Fund, which I think we're budgeting about $60 million this year that will appropriate what will be spent out of that fund in FY26, which the only allowable uses of the funds essentially are to provide infrastructure for housing and affordable housing. So it would be clearly in line with the use of that fund, as well as we do have the Affordable Housing Fund and other sources too that are earmarked every year to provide funding mechanisms for similar types of purposes.
What you're telling me is, no, we don't have anything specific right now, but we have pots of money that we can commit if you give us this money. Is that right? I just want to boil down your answer.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what Mayor is essentially relaying in this is that he will put forward in the FY26 budget $10 million. The source of where that may come from will obviously factor into what the needs and expenses of the county is generally. So the exact pot of money that may come from may differ, and it may be split amongst multiple different categories. But mayor is committing to, providing asking for the council for appropriation in FY '26, for $10 million for this project.
This document was prepared for us, right? That you're referring to, because it was prepared by your office. I was looking on the bottom, Joshua Nishita. It's not necessarily the actual application that, which is.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you for the question. This document wasn't specifically prepared for you folks. This isn't the application that was submitted, but generally when, and the reason why my name is on it is because the Department of Management coordinates all the congressionally directed spending and community project funding requests to make sure that we don't have all of our departments asking our senators and reps for all kinds of things that may not be in the priority areas of the county. So we essentially facilitate that. The Department of Housing and Human Concerns was the representative along with the developer before each of the congressional members. And they generally provide like a one-pager. This turned out to be a two-pager when meeting with congressional staff to just help them understand some of the basics of what the request is about. And so that's what this was prepared for and provided to you folks, but it wasn't specifically made for the LUC.
And my. Trying to think about how I want to phrase this, because it's kind of in that and you can tell me if I'm totally wrong. But the reason, when did you secure, or when did you, well, let me ask the question first. When did you secure the developer in this case?
Thank you for the question. The developer will ultimately be secured once the development agreement is passed by council, I guess.
He's been doing some certain things. I'm calling himself, what is it, a project? What was it? Service coordinator. So what,
Yeah,
when did he come into existence?
I can't recall the exact date offhand. It definitely was after the August 2023 wildfires and before we submitted the congressionally directed spending requests. So probably looking at like the December to November to January timeframe, somewhere around
So
there.
was he involved in this project at the time that you guys issued your February? What is it called? The February report in this?
Yes, the developer was involved in helping us ascertain what the infrastructure costs may be.
And if they, I noticed one of the other things too is that the Lanai company letter, I don't have, let me get it right here. Let me see if I can get it. Dated December 18 indicated that you were going to do this phase 1 and that you have water for phase 1. Is that right?
Thank you very much for the question. The letter from the Lanai Water Company basically supports the phase 1 project, indicating the amount of GPD that will be needed for the project to facilitate phase 1. And that was dated December 18, 2023.
Beyond that, do you have any commitments to phase 2, 3, 4, 5?
Thank you very much for the question. Because we have heard from the community about potential changes to future phases, not knowing what that may exactly look like, we haven't sought that commitment yet.
Is there a problem in the future with Lanai, or a source on Lanai? In other words, are you going to be hampered by the fact that you may not be able to get allocated water in the future?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm not aware of any challenges that potential future phases may experience, although I do know that they are limited in terms of the availability of water. But if that is something the LUC would like us to follow up on, we can touch base with Pulama Lanai and the Lanai Water Company regarding that request.
Well, because in Lahaina, we're told that the one of the projects that is being held up is because of the inability to allocate water. And so the question then turns is that what priority, Pulamala has its own project going on. DHL has its own project, which seems to be farther ahead than this particular project, right? No.
No, the Hokuau project is much further along, just because they have physical units up. The DHHL project, if they do pursue it, would be behind our project.
But all of those will require water. Is there, have you guys secured or have you determined that you guys can secure the water the necessary water for this particular project in its entirety?
Yeah, I guess, thank you for the question, but as I alluded to earlier, the makeup of the project may significantly change depending on what the community desires. So our main focus right now, which we've secured access to, is for phase one to make happen, and that's what we can commit to at this time.
So at this point in time, we're not going to commit ourselves to additional housing that was promised in 2011, I think was 400 something. So we're going to limit ourselves to 60 at this point in time. And that's what's going to happen, right? That we're not thinking, well, we're going to have 400 or 500 additional units there.
Thank you very much for the question. Phase one would consist of, I believe it was 72 units. And I think what's been established is that even since the original approval, the population makeup of Lanai has changed. I mean, unfortunately, you have younger population moving away. And then the need for the types of housing has changed too, as you have an aging in place population, and lack of other resources. So the overall scope of the project, it may be determined that phase one, in addition to DHHL and Hokuau, actually meets the demand that Lanai has, or it may be that only phase two and or phase three might be needed, and not all phases. But that's something that the county will work through. And what we're trying to focus on right now is get the community at least phase one of this project while we work with them on the future phases.
And do you estimate then that the demand, because I'm assuming that your department or one of your departments or housing departments would have studies as to determining what is potential future demand for Lanai regarding housing. And so I'm just trying to get a hold on how many houses we're going to have built, when will we build it, and whether we have the water to build it. And what you're telling me is, yeah, we have enough for, maybe we got enough for 72, but we don't know if we're even going to get any more because there may not be demand and things like that. So I'm just trying to get an idea of how to do that or how to get that information. And if you're telling me, hey, it's too far in the future.
Yeah,
That's
so
what you're telling me. It's too far in the future. You can't tell me that.
thank you for the question. I think what's noted here, I think you guys can see the time it's taken to get to this point. There's significant challenges with the county developing a project on Lanai. And so we are putting our focus into trying to meet the phase one, especially since that's the existing approvals that we have in place that we can accomplish. I don't know if DHHC has an update. I know that there was a housing study that was done. I don't know if it was SMS or another agency on the statewide housing survey that took into account different areas of Lanai, as well as we had discussions with DHHL and others regarding, as they work through their analysis about need and whatnot, that there may be opportunities to partner together to come up with a more accurate assessment given the changing dynamics that has occurred over the years. But I'll defer to DHHC if they're aware of any the status of the updated housing study.
Thank you, Mr. Nishida. Thank you for the question. Presently, SMS is currently working on the Hawaii housing planning study. One of the components that Maui has instituted in that is to have a in-depth analysis of Lanai needs especially. So we're anticipating that report in the next couple of months, and that will be very helpful in us determining the exact long-term need with regards to Lanai and their housing needs beyond phase one. But presently, we don't have any existing material with regards to a recent survey since Pulama's project was incorporated. So the SMS study is going to be looking specifically into the incorporation of that project on the island and then the needs going forward.
Was there such a study done in, if you know, in 2010 or 2011 when this first project was first offered or came about? And has that, and is this new study that you're doing would establish what changes have been made? Is that what the study is all about? Is there a baseline study that we're working on and find additional information?
Thank you for the question. I'm not aware of any study that was done when the original 201H was approved as far as a baseline to work off of. My understanding is that SMS was tasked with trying to assess the need based on Pulama's project as far as long-term housing opportunities that will need to satisfy the populace of the island going forward. But at the time, that's around the time that I first started with the housing division. I wasn't directly involved with the project, but I am not aware of any study that was done at the origination of the project.
Ms. Almeida, why did your department essentially just copy previous reports to the commission and submit it in February? Because it's essentially a copy of every single one that was done before. So why was your department only copying these things?
Thank you for the question. I have to check with director and deputy director who are not present today. I did not submit the reports, but I know that with regards to different administrations that have looked at the task that Mr. Nishida has brought up and gone over, it has been it's moved a lot slower than any of us would have liked. But with the Ikaika's involvement, we're very optimistic with the opportunities that they're going to provide, the funding they're going to be able to secure to make it happen, because financially it was determined to be infeasible for a good period of time without these partnerships. Thank you.
If you weren't involved in the preparing of the report, the most recent report, my question is, then who was involved? Because you're presented here as the housing expert in this area. And in fact, I think that you were referred to by your department to correspond with or to contact with, according to my understanding from the staff. My question is that if you didn't prepare the report and you didn't, and you have no idea why it was done that way, why are you essentially here?
Thank you for the question. Based on, again, the optimism we have with partnering with Ikaika, it's been a struggle working on this project in the past with regards to come up with the funding that was needed to implement the infrastructure over time. Obviously, those costs have not gone down. They've continued to go up. But now we have a means in which that we feel we can get this project done. I can't speak to how the report was submitted previously, but I do know that we have been working hard to try and find a means to make it possible to get it done. And that's our goal. Thank you.
Mr. Almeida, I'm going back to my question. You haven't answered it. If you didn't prepare the report, why are you here? Because the report was, that's what we're asked for. We're here to ask questions about your report. Are you here to supplement the report? Are you here to make sure that the report was correct? And I know you're just sitting there trying to answer my questions, but what frustrates me the most, and after listening to what has been going on about this whole project and only now taking a look at it, is that it seems as though, absent, if it wasn't for the fires, that nobody cared about housing in Lanai, especially this project. And it seems as though the attitude that the county has taken is to copy previous reports and submit them up until today. So, as a citizen of this county and land use commission, I'm thoroughly disappointed on the response that the Department of Housing has had in this regard to this commission. And, you know, we're not dumb, but, you know, so please, if the housing department, which I know you're not the director, if they want to put forth what's been going on, please have somebody spend the time and write up what has been going on and what has been happening. Especially since this has been, what is it? 2018 was the last one, right? You're 6 years late, right? Especially since you're 6 years late. Okay. And I know I try to be nice on my last day, but I can't help myself sometimes.
Try harder.
Chair, if I may just, make a
Please, you
comment.
may respond.
Okay, thank you. No, I think your points are well taken, and I think it's well understood. I think my understanding of the report is that it was essentially an update from 2019 to 2023. Once again, I mean, I hate to say what Buddy said. I personally wasn't involved in the report, but nothing essentially happened from 2019 to 2023. So while, you know, it's,
Water, you told me you got a developer. You told me that you have been talks about trying to figure out the funding mechanism of that. So don't tell me that is the case. This is just laziness. And this is an insult. And I'm sorry I cannot contain myself, but but what you just said contradicts what the record shows, right?
thank you, Chair. No, thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi, for the statement in question. As you can imagine, the complexity involved with, as we stated, like, there's a lot of things still not even final yet that we're just providing an update to the commission on that we still have to go through the necessary approvals for. So I don't believe that there was any feeling on the department side to like withhold information or to not provide information to the LUC. But I think your frustrations and comments regarding making sure that the department is not copying the same information and providing the most accurate assessment available is well taken, and we'll take that back to the department to make sure they understand the LUC's position. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Ohigashi, anything further? Okay. Commissioner Carr-Smith.
One question about the housing itself. I don't want to make any assumptions, but who are these houses for? Or who will they be for? Are they for the residents of Lanai? Are they for Maui County? Will there be any controls or restrictions about who can be in these homes?
Thank you for the question. If my colleagues have anything to add, I welcome it. But the main thing I would note is we do have to follow fair housing laws. So the provision of these units would be subject to fair housing requirements.
You can add additional requirements though too, right?
Chair, can I respond?
Who's that? Yeah,
Mimi.
please do.
Mimi Desjardins, that's a fair point, and we struggle always with trying to carve out, for example, a certain percentage for teachers or firemen, or making them available for residents of the West Side, et cetera. And in looking at all of the constitutional requirements in fair housing law, We settle mostly on the language of to the extent permitted by law, and then we will try to put our wish list of limitations. And then when the lottery actually occurs, we can look at the pool and look at the law and see if we can jive it to fit our intent, which is hopefully Lanai residents or West Side residents. So that's a good question, and we do struggle with that often to try to make it less available for folks who it's not intended for.
Understood. Thank you.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah, I got a question.
Commissioner Coelho.
What's the current population on Lanai? 2,500? 2,000?
Thank you for the question. I apologize. I don't know offhand. It would be a few thousand though, would be the current population.
And you know, I'm sorry, but did anybody do any kind of research as far as what kind of income they're making there? Their average income is about 40,000 a year.
Thank you very much for the question. There was, so I think what Buddy alluded to earlier, there was some assessments done previously and currently in development. Hukuau also kind of did their own assessments, and Councilmember Johnson and his staff also did an informal kind of survey of residents. You know, based upon a lot of that, that's why we're shooting for that 80% and below AMI. Given the need in the area as well as how that population is not currently being served.
So how many of these units are going to be 30% up to, well, for you to be 30% AMI, you got to make at least 30,000. All depends on family size. So how many actually would qualify with their income that they're currently making? And the current residents is currently living on Lanai. I mean, so I'm not sure how many units are going to be 30% AMI. How many of them going to be 40? Are we looking at a percentage of them being 80%?
Thank you for the question. I don't have the exact breakdown in front of me. Some of those plans are still being developed, but in regards to like specifically the LIHTC funding, the way they look at it now, to my understanding, is the average has to be about 60% and below AMI, which means that you can offset, like, you know, you serve a 30% household and an 80% household, then that can average down to, you know, towards that 60% total AMI category. So it's some type of average stacking method that they, to my understanding, that they'll be utilizing here going forward into the future. But generally speaking, more of the homes are in kind of the middle area to meet that average, and then some on the very low end and some on the higher end.
You know, I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Smith's question as far as, is this units for outsiders, or are they kind of like designed for the people that's currently living there in Lanai? Thank you.
Thank you. I guess what I'll say here is we have to follow fair housing laws, and obviously we want to help to take care of our Lanai residents who are in need of housing.
Commissioners, anything further? So I want to, obviously you've sensed a little frustration coming from our commission, and it's not solely targeted to you, but we have a backlog of tens of thousands of affordable housing projects that struggle to come to fruition. So you're not unique in that struggle. And we're trying to find ways to understand what those impediments are. Largely they are financial, and often they're tied to front end infrastructure. But they're real. And I've got my own theories about why it's that way in Hawaii and not other places, but it's real, and we appreciate that. But it does come out in frustrations on both sides. We also are frustrated in part because we have a lot of delinquent projects that we never hear from unless we actually reach out to them and tell us and request what's going on. So I do implore you to be more proactive in informing this commission about your successes and your struggles. Then we know what's going on. Otherwise, we end up in situations where we're frustrated. So you do have a progress report that's due to us in June of 2025. I'm going to use the word robust. I strongly encourage you to be as complete and robust in that as possible, including project costs. Now, for example, I would imagine that if you could give the priority to staff to develop a total project cost, it wouldn't be that difficult. You've got infrastructure costs. I know what this form looks like that you sent to the government, and you have to estimate other costs that are paid by others. You've also represented in the information you provided this morning that the housing itself that would be built in phase one has been engineered, designed, and constructed in Kona. So you're not starting with a blank lot. You know what the houses are going to look like, and you know what they cost in Kona very recently. So this commission, I think I speak for my fellow commissioners, is looking for a robust update which addresses the milestones that you've talked about in terms of financing, in terms of project costs. How's it going to come together? And let me say up front, the focus should be, in my mind, 95% on phase one, because the uncertainty associated with phases 2 through 5 are so great that I think you'd just tell us it's just all about your uncertainty. I don't want to hear about uncertainty. I want to hear about certainty. I want to hear about certainty for phase one. And we're going to give you a year to tell us, to figure that out and tell us. And we really encourage you to put it on your priority stack and get the people assigned to it to do it. It's a tough job, and you're not alone in the struggles to build affordable housing. So that's where I'm coming from. Commissioners, anything further? Okay, back to the script. So, Ms. Lee Jardine, you want to put on your DPP hat for a second and tell us what you think about this project?
Thank you very much, Chair. I did have a discussion with the planning department about this project. As you can probably guess from the presentation, they don't have a whole lot to say about it. I did find it kind of interesting that they were as involved as they were, but it shows you how old this is. Our newer projects, the Department of Planning really isn't mentioned very much in our 201H approval. So, but they are interested generally in the concept of affordable housing. And I'm hoping with the bifurcation of the departments and with the knowledge base of affordable housing that we hope to migrate into our new Department of Housing, that we can overcome some of the frustrations that we feel. We're all citizens of Maui County, and we understand how difficult these projects are. So we share your frustration, and we don't want to add to it. So we certainly make a better effort in the next update to make sure you folks understand. In defense, we all know a lot of these items have to do with things will start to happen once the project is rolling along, drainage, putting up warning sirens, et cetera. We're not going to obviously put money into that until we're ready, but that's not to say that we can't do a better job to let you folks see that our commitment is real. And so my apologies for that, but Department of Planning at this point doesn't have anything further to add. Thank you.
So, question on top of my head is that the petitioner, which is a part of the county, at some point in time, I'm going to be optimistic, is going to go to the council. He's going to go to the mayor and say, put this money in the budget, and he's going to go to the council and say, we want to see the cash. What role I can't imagine if that's going to happen without the Department of Planning being questioned on, do you support this? Does it make sense? Is it within the plans? What is the role of the Department of Planning in that process to get real cash out of the county budget?
Thank you, Chair. So the Department of Planning's role is really more upfront because once the 201H 38 exemption is granted, or that the modifications are made in the exemptions, one of the exemptions is an exemption from Title 19. So in a lot of ways, the Department of Planning is no longer involved in that role because the exemptions run deep into what would be otherwise their responsibility. I do want to say this particular project is slightly unique in DHHC's less involvement than normal, and that is because the managing director's office has really taken the bull by the horns in this particular project because so much of it is tied to the responsibilities about funding, federal funding, and that's really their wheelhouse. So this project is sort of straddling two departments, managing director and DHHC. What I and will go back and suggest to them is that there's better communication between those, the department and the managing director's office to make sure that DHHC is in full understanding of the managing director's efforts. But once Ikaiko Hana, or we're assuming that would be the developer we'll be working with, comes on board, my sense and experience in these is that DHHC will be much more involved in the actual modifications that may have to come before you. The Department of Planning may have to come in and make some requests to this body.
But the original 201H anticipated over 400 housing units. Now we're talking 72, and I'd be highly suspect we ever get more than 72, to be honest with you. Does the Department of Planning just say, well, we approved a project for 400, we're only gonna get 72 and we're not involved anymore?
Thank you, Chair. No, probably the opposite. We would get together, and part of that would be obviously the needs since 2011 have shifted with Hokuau and DHHL. And so it would absolutely involve the departments, probably managing director, planning, corp counsel, DHHC, to come together and make sure that we're still all on the same page as far as the modifications and exemptions that were requested back in 2011. And then make some amendments to that. I can pretty much guarantee you that this 201H as it stands is not the 201H that's going to be on the ground.
I would say that I would agree with you. It's not the guarantee. And if I project myself to be for a hypothetical county council member, I'm going to be asking you guys all these questions about, are we only building phase one and that's the whole project now? And how much money do you need just for that? Because bottom line, you don't get the money, this thing's not going to be built. So hopefully you get the money or for phase one.
The money and the infrastructure, both, yes.
Yep. Commissioners, anything further? The county? Commissioner Ohigashi.
One procedural question, this, modifications of the 201H has to go back to council? Or is it?
Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so, any discussions of, is the 72 homes being proposed in phase one, does that match the 201H designation now? And the Land Use Commission DNO now? So, and if not, do you have to come in to both of them for changes?
Thank you, Commissioner Oigashi. I suspect that we would come back to both bodies to make those substantial amendments. They're not slight modifications. So yes, could cause other conditions to develop or to knock off conditions that are in existence right now. Yes.
This is for phase one only I'm talking about now.
Well, for this is intended to be 5 phases. I look at the DNO and it's pretty vague in terms of what's expected of each phase, not just the timeline, but what will happen. So that may not be enough to trigger a change. But if the commitment is we are now only going to do phase one and nothing more, then obviously that is a substantial change.
So what I'm trying to get at is I want to be sure, because you guys are the enforcement agency. We don't have that enforcement powers and you got to regulate yourself. So I just want to make sure that you guys are saying that what you're saying is correct, is that not correct, but what you're saying is that phase one shouldn't be a problem. We don't have, we're not going to, we are working within the parameters of the original DNO and the original 201H. If we modify, it'll be on change on phases 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that would have to come back to the commission and the council for changes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Not necessarily. During the process of developing and finalizing phase one, our department and the other departments involved may make a determination that substantial modifications exist even within phase one that would trigger us having to go back and asking for amendments. We are not saying that phase one, whatever that looks like, is lesser than 5 phases and therefore it's okay. Within each phase, if there are substantial modifications that were represented to you, because one of our obvious requirements is to stick to what was represented back when this DNO was initiated, as well as the 201H resolution that approved it is. And so this is a discussion we'll have to have when we sit down with the developer and we look at what phase one looks like.
I think you better have that discussion as soon as possible because it takes quite some time to get through that process. Anyway, that's fine.
Again, I would just note, since I think part of the question was regarding the amount of units for phase one, the project modifications specified by the Maui County Council for the 201H approval identified phase one of the development shall consist of up to 81 units, of up to 81 units.
281 and.
Yeah, so we
Current thinking is-
mix as determined by the Department of Housing and Human Concerns, single family homes and multifamily homes. So we do believe that the 72 units does comply with the 201H.
72 is complies with up to 81, is what you're saying.
Can I interject one tiny thing? And that is that may be true, but what those 71 units look like versus what was initially represented, that's what our department would look at carefully and say, is this really a substantial modification or not?
Yeah.
So not just the number.
So I'm back to my robust progress report next June. Hopefully this topic will be specifically addressed and clarified as well. Okay. Any other questions for the county planning? Hearing none, thank you very much. State. Ms. Cato.
Thank you, Chair. Allison Cato, Deputy Attorney General for the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. OPSD has not had time to review the documents submitted this morning in any detail, but continues to support this project despite the delay and uncertainty in future phases. The development time schedule was waived in DR 1144 due to lack of availability of public funds and other factors that were mentioned by the county. We understand that the county may still have future challenges in working out obtaining the resources necessary for this project. But it sounds like there are positive changes occurring that will hopefully lead to progress. OPSD understands the need for housing remains and supports its expedited production. We note that as things progress, the county should continue to keep looking at whether any information, plans, and studies may need to be updated to account for changes in the project and circumstances, which the county has acknowledged that they will do. And we look forward to receiving more solid information and plans in the next status report. We have no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cato. Commissioners. We need a bio break. It's 12:04. My intent is to complete this agenda item before we break for lunch. So we'll take a 6-minute bio break, come back at 12:10. We are recessed. Take our seats, please. I'm just going to reiterate, commissioners, any questions for the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development? I have none. Thank you. Final call for public testimony. Ms. Kwan, has anybody, members of the public, shown up that want to testify at this time?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, this has been a status report. We are not required to make any motion or take any action at this time. If no action is taken, the requirement of continued annual status reports will remain. And the next status report is due in June, and I have been guaranteed it will be robust. However, if the commission feels that its concerns have not been addressed based on the comments and responses provided by the petitioner, the chair will entertain a motion that either the petitioner status report has not sufficiently addressed the commission's concerns and that further meetings or status updates are necessary to provide the opportunity so that future dates can be determined by the LUC staff, or there is reason to believe that the petitioner will not adhere to the conditions set forth in decision order. And that may result in the staff to move forward with a formal order to show cause proceedings. Are there any questions, commissioners, on this requirement for us to proceed? Hearing none, it's time to deliberate. Any final comments, or does anybody have any comments about the status report that has been presented today? No. My comment is that it sure would have been great if the thing that was submitted at 9:30 this morning was actually presented. That would have been the status report we were looking for. We kind of got there to the back door, and we understand the miscommunication about this not being a virtual meeting. But it could have been a virtual meeting if you requested it up front. Just FYI. So, commissioners, deliberate. What action, if any, would you like to take in this matter? Anybody? Do you feel that what we've heard today is sufficient and adequate for what we were looking for to learn?
Chair,
Where am I? Commissioner Carsmith.
the female voice.
The female voice, the strong female voice.
I just wanted to comment that, I understand the frustration involved, but I also understand that this project was approved in 2010 and that a lot changes between 2010 and now, on a variety of levels and, with not much happening since 2019. We know what happened then. COVID kind of changed life for all of us, and then the fires. So I can imagine that Maui County is struggling with a variety of things, and this is one of them. So I appreciate personally the progress that they're trying to make at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Yeah, I concur. I think that you've adequately informed us today as directly and indirectly as you could or did. We encourage you to move forward aggressively with phase one. That should be the focus. Get the money the best you can and keep us informed. And the best way to do that is with a very robust report to us, because it's going to take you several months to get to where you know whether or not you're going forward and what time frame and what's going to totally cost, et cetera. So we look forward to that. But I feel that Chair feels that we don't need to proceed with a show cause order or request anything in the interim from you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Ohigashi.
I'm not going to make a motion or anything to accept the report or anything like that, or believe or think that everything was adequate. But what I want to do is, I'm not going to either move to the extreme and have an OC before us. What I'd like to do is a commitment from the petitioner and the county as a whole, that they communicate with our staff to keep them informed of what is going on. And the important part about that is that our staff is the one that informs us of whether or not we really need a hearing on this matter, on a status report. And if they don't get the information, or if they're not kept abreast, they will be essentially telling us, hey, we got to find out. So I'm asking if the County of Maui and the Managing Director's Office specifically, that will you be able to communicate with our staff regarding the most recent changes and keep them up to date? And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be every year. I was thinking more like within a couple months, or whenever you make decisions that you can inform the staff of that. And it would be easy to do so if you had an email system, or you do, yeah. But those are the types of things that I think that will be important to alleviate any kind of tearing your hair out at the end in dealing with the county on these issues before. And I know it's maybe a little bit burdensome, but like the chairman said, it might be a good idea, since you're going to have to communicate to us anyway concerning if there's going to be changes in phase one or the required. So I think that if we can get that commitment from you, that would be terrific, Mr. Managing Director.
Thank you. I mean, the short answer is yes, absolutely. Be happy to even provide my personal contact info to staff to be able to reach out to me directly, and I can communicate with them directly too. But I will stress to the department the need to provide better information and communication with the LUC, especially as it relates to, you know, regardless of whatever the status is, but make sure you folks are kept informed about what's occurring. Thank you.
Yeah, if you are successful in finalizing a development agreement or not by the end of this year, simple little email to our staff to clarify that would be great. And then they'll inform us. Just an example. Anything further? Okay, I think that will conclude this matter. And thank you very much for you guys making the time today.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, I'm going to move to adjourn this meeting and encourage all of you to stick around for lunch, which has been provided by staff. So this meeting is now recessed, adjourned.